right, everyone. Thank you for coming to this inaugural Ekstasis Ambassador Welcome event. It has been a long time in the formational phase, and we're so excited to finally share this time with you. I know we're all kind of tired of Zoom meetings in general, so we're going to make this quick, easy, exciting. We're going to hear from all of you, not at once. And unfortunately, we don't have time to go through everyone tonight. But over the next year or so, however long this goes, we do want to hear introductions from every single person that's involved in this. But tonight we're just going to start with a few. But to welcome you, my name is Connor Sweetman. I am the founder of Ekstasis. I started it about 7 years ago, but currently, in addition to founding it, I'm also the special projects editor at Christianity Today. So about 2.5 years ago, we had the blessing of Ekstasis being involved in the CT ecosystem, and they have just been a fantastic partner and umbrella of media company that has been able to really allow Ekstasis to flourish to a whole new level. So it's been an amazing couple of years. But I'll start it back. When I started about 7 years ago, I was just graduating university. I had gone through my own period of a little bit of what we now call deconstruction, and figuring out what I actually believed and if I even wanted to follow Jesus. But I knew that I had a deep artistic longing and aesthetic sensibility that had been honed during my university years. I'd fallen in love with poetry and literature and its shaping power on culture. And I really had come to recognize how powerful it is in opening up the undercurrents that shape our daily life on a day-to-day level, but also just the broad swaths of cultural development through the eras. So I fell in love with literature. I fell in love with the Lord once again, and I wanted to find a way to bridge these two seemingly opposing impulses that I had inside of myself. And I was finding a couple outlets, whether they were literary journals or kind of niche websites that seem to be doing really powerful things. I remember seeing a copy of Image Journal on my dad's desk. He worked at the university. And I realized at that point, I'm like, wow, there's a whole world of people that are trying to bridge these longings of the aesthetic sensibility with a deep spiritual searching and longing as well. But to be completely honest, I was finding that on the online space and the online kind of outpouring of that, it was usually pretty outdated websites. It might be really good for kind of the 40, 50, 60 set, which is totally valid, all the power to them. But there was a clear sense that my aesthetic, digital kind of savvy upbringing didn't really have as much of an outlet on these pre-established places. So I wanted to see if we can bridge the work that these people have been doing in their private studies, in the libraries, in their studios for decades, 40, 50 years, and create an online space that could then bridge it to a generation that know that they have these deep longings and aesthetic sensibilities, but might not fully kind of know about this very niche ecosystem of literary journals. And so that's when we started the Instagram account and the website. And over the last 7 years, it's really gained a momentum that I had no idea existed and really built a community that is so wonderful to be a part of and wonderful to usher. But recognizing that Ekstasis is just one part of a broad ecosystem that is all aiming to revive the imagination and seek the poetic angle on our life and faith. And I know that you guys have that same impulse, and so many of you are working away, whether you're early career creative, or you're just graduating, or you've been working in this space for 30 years, and you're a professor or you're a teacher. It's beautiful to see the way each of you are ushering it forward in your own spaces. And we just wanted to create the opportunity to bring that momentum and that energy together. and see what we can do together. And because, yeah, no man is an island, no woman is an island, and we're really excited to gather today. So basically, I'm going to do a few quick introductions of some people that have been involved with Ekstasis in different capacities over the last couple of years. And again, we'll want to hear from more of you down the line over the next couple months, weeks, whatever it is. But we'll start with a few people today that will tell us a little bit about how they ended up finding out about Ekstasis, where they are now, and of course, what is a favorite book that they have read recently. And then we'll move on to a couple guest speakers. And then we'll end it off with some great opportunities that you guys have together to bring it to your own community. So we'll start out. I'm going to put Claire Nelson on the spot here. She was the Ekstasis intern this past summer, and she did a wonderful job at helping me build this whole Ekstasis Ambassador program. But before we get into that, I'd just love to hear, Claire, where are you from? What brought you to Ekstasis, and what's a book that you enjoyed recently?
Yeah, so my name is Claire. I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I first got connected with Ekstasis through another Christian journalism type organization called the Veritas Institute, which is put on by another organization called the Augustine Collective. They have like a week-long student journalism thing that I went to, and then I published with Ekstasis after writing a piece through them. And then I began as an intern with Ekstasis last summer, which I have loved and will be continuing, thankfully, beyond this summer. So, and a favorite book that I have read recently, I would definitely say Falling Upward by Richard Rohr. I read that a few months ago, but that's one that's just had a lasting impact on me. He talks about like the two halves of life in the spiritual journey. So I would definitely recommend that one. Thank you.
Wonderful. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, so it might be a little jarring, but we'll move on here. All right, great. Caroline has been an assistant editor here at Ekstasis for over a year now and has really helped develop the editorial vision and brought her skill set in a beautiful way. So Caroline, tell us about yourself a bit.
Hi, everyone. So good to be here. Connor and I had talked about this sort of ambassador idea a while ago, and so it's amazing to see it come to fruition. So I'm a fine artist as well as an editor by trade, and so that's what sort of drew me into Ekstasis. I started with an artist profile, and then sort of in a shot in the dark asked Connor if he needed some hands on deck, and since then have jumped on board. In my classes in my undergrad, in my art training, I was really just transformed by a drawing class and remember leaving one day and actually seeing the world differently. And so I've had that experience through art as well as literature. So Ekstasis is the culmination of all of those things in one, as well as just a wonderful community to have those honest discussions that we all crave. So I guess that's, yeah, a little bit about me, but my book as of late that has been a favorite, I read this actually back in January, but it has sort of imprinted me so much that I keep coming back to it in my mind, is Hannah Coulter by Wendell Berry. So I really enjoyed it for the narrative, both of motherhood, I'm a mom of two, and also the emphasis on the importance in place and integrated community, which is something we're here searching for, but seems sort of lost in our very transitory generation. So a really, really good novel that you can sit down and dive into.
Wonderful. Thank you, Caroline. Okay, I'm going to kick it over to Caleb Signs. I believe I'm saying your last name properly. He wrote a poem for Ekstasis that I think 2 years ago or last year was one of our most read. And then he also wrote for last Easter's devotional put out by CT that I also helped put together. So Caleb, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I think my journey in connecting with the Ekstasis is, my degree is in English. I was an English teacher before getting called into ministry, eventually into pastoring. We're actually 4 days away from planting a church. But so much of I guess my journey is just sitting in that intersection of faith and art and almost feeling a little like searching for a home. So when I stumbled upon Ekstasis and I saw an opportunity to submit a poem, it was actually a poem I had written from a very dark place that I was fortunate not to be in anymore, but I felt like I had a community to receive that. And so when I met Connor and kind of exchanged some emails through that, I really found a home. And I think really kind of shaped my perspective on what was possible in ministry. And so much of what I've discovered in reading Ekstasis, connecting with Connor, and just realizing that there's a place for that is not only shaping my life, but our ministry. We're actually 4 days away from getting to celebrate the start of that. Our church is called The Garden, which is not a plug unless you happen to be in San Antonio. But the book that really has meant a lot to me over the course of the year that I've returned to a lot was a poet, W.S. Merwin. He wrote a book called Garden Time, which he's one of my favorites. It's one of the last books he wrote, and it's just incredibly profound. And we've tried to sneak it in as often as we can, just references to it, sermons or shirts, all kinds of things. So just really fortunate to be a part of this. Even getting to write for CT just wouldn't have happened without Ekstasis. So really honored and excited for what's to come.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, Raed, he helped the birth of the Ecstatic newsletter. So that's kind of envisioned to be a more accessible, straight to your inbox, lighter read kind of thing, version of Ekstasis. Raed Gilliam was a big part behind that as well. So take it away. Tell us about yourself, Raed.
You give me too much credit, Connor, but yeah, I was born in Beirut, kind of born and raised, grew up in the Middle East, and then came to the States for college. Always really loved story, kind of the imagination, but also kind of had this sort of journalism, what do I do with current events, current big questions, tension. And over the course of college, I started getting interested in documentary, and then ended up doing this like project for a political science internship about like political polarization on the campus, turned it into a documentary. And it was pretty far away. Like I would never would have imagined coming to America and doing a US politics documentary. That was like the last thing on my mind. But actually someone who works at Regent College in Vancouver watched it, really liked it, and was like, hey, why don't you come spend a week doing a summer school program in Vancouver? And I was like, heck yeah. When I was there, I met a Christianity Today journalist who happened to be in town, Cara Bettis, for those of you who know her. And she was like, you know, you'd really get along with Connor. And so I had heard about Ekstasis from like another UVA student, college student friend of mine who followed them on Instagram and kept reposting things. And I was like, that's the coolest thing in the world. I'd love to be involved with them someday. Next thing I knew, I was talking to Connor, and he's just been such a good friend and mentor to me, as I'm sure he's been to many of you. So I'm really excited to be a part of this. And I guess my book recommendation would be, it's a bit of a dense one, but Presence in the Modern World is a book by Jacques Ellul. And it kind of really brings together his like really in-depth pioneering sociological look on society, what's going on in the modern world, how did we get here. He really kind of unpacks this idea of technique or the machine, the way kind of society is becoming, I guess, mechanized, but also kind of really brings some theological insights into, all right, how are we to be salt and light in the context of this? It's like worth many, many reads. But yeah, Presence in the Modern World, Jacques Ellul, and yeah, excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right, one more because I didn't realize she was coming. Julia Bartel has written some fantastic pieces for both Ekstasis and Ecstatic. And by the way, I just want to say I've seen many of your names in different capacities over the last couple of years, so it's very special to see so many faces here today. And if you're wondering why it's so dark here, I actually just moved to London last week from Canada. So yeah, I'm on, it's about 10:45 p.m. here, but we're going strong. So Julia just got back from Scotland, from the UK. Tell us about yourself, Julia.
Yes, hi. Yeah, we joked that me and Connor switched places, but I'm Julia. I'm Canadian originally. I just finished my Master of Letters in Theology and the Arts at the University of St. Andrews, which was wonderful. getting to study how the arts have influenced theology and vice versa, and getting to find your niche and that kind of thing. It was really fun. Hoping to go back to Scotland permanently, but for now I am back in the States job searching. So yay, so fun. Let me think of a favorite book I've read recently. This summer, I got really into Emily St. John Mandel and read 3 of her books in a row. They're so wonderful. My favorite was probably The Glass Hotel, which is kind of a ghost noir mystery thriller. So good. Definitely would recommend.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, it's fantastic to be here. We'll keep things chugging along. We'll open up with Claire. She will give us a little bit of a talk on creative collaboration and networking and kind of the mindset behind this ambassador program and what we really hope to create. So I'll let you take it away, Claire.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I helped to structure the Ekstasis Ambassador Program throughout this summer. So on the application, just kind of like the bullet points of like, oh, what can you do as an ambassador? So I just wanted to kind of talk about that, some of the thought that went into that. So I think one of the biggest perks of being an ambassador is having a direct line of publication to Ekstasis, which is really, a privilege to publish in a national publication. So that is really great. And also, we are going to be providing many opportunities for all ambassadors to develop and engage their creativity as a writer, as a creative, with exclusive trainings, with writers, successful novelists, journalists, people within the Christianity Today and Ekstasis network. And we also intend to welcome people that we have speak at our events and stuff into our network, our Ekstasis Ambassadors network. And we also are working to get a structured way for you to bring the Ekstasis Ambassadors program into your own community, whether that be your college or your workplace or your local community, by hosting an author or artist event that we help to sponsor, plan, connect you with, or collaborating to have like a local Ekstasis cafe with people in your community to, bond over having an aesthetic experience, very much in the manner of Ekstasis. So, and on that note, we also have a lot of networking opportunities and thought that has gone into this program. And one of the other biggest benefits of this program is the ways that you as an ambassador will get to connect with one another, because all of you as a cohort bring so many wonderful professional skills and backgrounds, and will be such a great resource to one another. So one of the ways we are starting to do that is by the creation of a Slack channel that will be shared with you if it has not been already. Within that Slack channel, we have some channels we have a channel called Arts and Culture. And in that one, you can create connections based on shared interests that you will have as members of this program. It's a great place to discuss any and all things theology, film, media, novels, journalism, any media content that you find interesting, exciting, doesn't necessarily have to be explicitly theological. We'll also have a channel just about the Ekstasis Ambassadors program, things related to programming, updates. Eventually, we'll have a system for you to share bios, LinkedIns with each other to get to know more about one another's hobbies, professional interests, backgrounds. And then we also will have a channel for projects and opportunities, which will be very helpful for everyone, I'm sure. In that one, you can share any job opportunities from your networks that may be of interest to other people in this program, and also just seek out general, professional guidance or asks. If you want to say, oh, I'm looking for a job in this specific niche area, do any of you guys know of any relevant openings within your networks or a specific type of job, that sort of thing. So that will be made available to you very soon. And we really encourage everybody to be really active in there, get to know one another, discuss things of interest to you. Just go off on your passions. So that is the way, one of the main ways you can network within this program, which will be really, really helpful. And there's also potentially ways you can use this Ekstasis Ambassadors Program to network beyond the Ekstasis Ambassadors Program. So, for example, if you want to write an article for Ekstasis or for another publication, and you want to get in touch with a specific public figure, like Christian intellectual or something like that, to interview for this article or to speak with about the subject, we can try to use the name recognition of Ekstasis, of Christianity Today, to help you get in touch with a public figure that maybe you were not able to get in touch with in the past. And obviously we can't promise that's going to do anything, but we can definitely try. So if you have any if you have any desire to do that right away, definitely like email me or Connor or one of the other Ekstasis staff members. So that is my little spiel on networking. And here, let me check where I'm at for time. Okay. So I have a few little tips and things that I have found beneficial as a writer. So just to give you a little bit of background on me, I'm a newly graduated college student, so definitely very much in the category of like new aspiring creative. A lot of you guys in this program probably have much more experience than me. So I hope that everybody can find this beneficial, particularly any college students that are on the chat who are also newly entering their experience as a writer. So for some of my background, I published a piece with Ekstasis called Ultimately Insatiable, which was about social media and mental health. And and I'm also an English major, so I've gotten a lot of writing advice like throughout my like schooling and everything. And a lot of it I have found not that beneficial. I feel like a lot of writing advice is maybe haphazard, and it's not always going to directly yield creative benefit. The thing or the concept that has definitely had the most impact on my creative process and the most benefit to me as a writer is actually from the field of psychology, has nothing explicitly to do with writing. So I have the book here. It's called Flow, the Psychology of Optimal Experience. I love this book. I talk about it a lot in my professional life, I feel like. It is written by a guy named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who helped found the field of the psychological subdiscipline of positive psychology, which is purposed with studying human flourishing. So flow, the concept is basically when you get rapidly like engaged in a set task that demands all of your concentration, that produces the best human experience and the best like creative or intellectual output. So that really, applying that concept to my life has been super duper beneficial. For me, it's just a matter of concentration. And I think most writers or creatives can like relate to this. It's like every once in a while you kind of get into the zone, like you're writing a lot and then it just becomes a lot easier. Flow really like neurologically, psychologically named what that is for me. And it also just gave me a lot of practical advice because like one of the things that makes it difficult to get into flow is excessive stimulation, like what you're getting on social media in the attention economy. So gearing yourself away from that and towards more like concentration requiring activities can just like has helped me so much as a writer without necessarily even applying any specific writing principles. And then another piece of writing advice that I actually received from the conference from which I learned about, which I got connected with Ekstasis, was a writing book called Writing Without Teachers by Peter Elbow. I have a little excerpt from that book available on the internet, and I'll share that in the chat after I'm done speaking. In that book, Peter Elbow kind of evangelizes the practice of free writing, or other people call it exploratory writing. The idea is just to write really, really fast without utilizing your editorial instinct, because people have editorial instincts where they're criticizing their own writing and judging themselves, and that can get in the way of your like production instinct in which you're just like writing, generating content in kind of a more stream of consciousness way. Peter Elbow's practical advice about how to write fast free writing was like the way that I learned to operationalize the concept of flow, and that has been the most like central component of my writing process. I wrote like when I first learned about Peter Elbow's like techniques, I wrote like the majority of the piece that I mentioned that I published with Ekstasis, Ultimately Insatiable. So yeah, those are my 2 pieces of writing advice. I hope people found benefit in that. And thank you so much. And I will pass it on to our next speaker.
Wonderful. That was awesome, Claire. Thank you so much. I think you bridge kind of the, as you say, the psychology and the artistic impulse so well, as well as the spiritual, obviously. And the way that you write is very unique. And I'd love for all of us to learn from that kind of not only free flow, obviously we have to take care of the craft of our writing too, which you're not advocating against, but sometimes we do put up so many obstacles that don't need to be there, and we can just access the muse in a more direct way. I don't want to be heretical here. But anyways, okay, we're going to get into the next speaker, Yi-Ning Chu. She just joined about 10 minutes ago. She's on California time, so literally 8 hours between her and I. But we're so thankful to have her today. She is going to, I'm just going to pin her screen instead of Claire. But essentially, she's going to tell us a little bit about her journey as well with publication and being a Christian writer, and why that's even important in today's oversaturated market. And I won't steal her thunder, but Yi-Ning has been a fantastic bedrock for me to kind of bounce ideas off. And she's so wise and so skillful. And so we're really excited to have her perspective here tonight. So I'm going to pin Yi-Ning if I can find her on this screen. I found you. Okay. Replace spotlight. Okay. Yi-Ning, introduce yourself, tell us about yourself, and then go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you, Connor, for this introduction. And I've really been looking forward to meeting everybody here. I'm trying to make eye contact with folks. So as you can see, I have like a Band-Aid over one eye right now because of an unfortunate playground accident with my children. So just know I'm trying to look at you with sincerity and full attention, even if you can't really see what's going on right here. So I'll just give a brief introduction about who I am. And I think my goal here today is like to just be transparent and vulnerable in terms of talking about how my journey into writing and publication as a Christian person has been, and then to share a little bit about some of the questions that Connor and I have also been discussing in terms of what it means to build a community around faith and art, particularly in a cultural context where many of those things are intersecting with commerce. And so that's kind of the basic outline of what I'm going to be sharing with you all today. So I'll just start by telling you a little bit about myself and how I came to be writing and what that's looked like for me. So my background is I have worked for my entire adult life, primarily in nonprofits, aiming at racial justice and educational settings. And the big goal of my 20s was to do some form of racial justice work with the church. Now, underneath all that was also a desire to write, but as all of you know, writing takes so much time. And throughout my 20s, there just wasn't really a good window of time that I regularly set aside to dedicate time to like hone the craft and to learn it. But it was in the back of my mind that one day I would do this. So now, throughout my 20s, I was like doing racial justice equity work. I was angling to do this with a church one day. And at the end of my 20s, I got my dream job, which was to partner with a local evangelical congregation and to lead a racial justice ministry for them. And I was elated. And this was the thing that I wanted to do with my life. And this was how I pictured the rest of my life was going to go, because I envisioned myself serving in this capacity indefinitely. But then fast forward to 2021, where many communities rightly had an interest in pursuing racial justice, but some of that fervor died down as 2021 progressed. And eventually the ministry I was a part of was dissolved. And I suddenly found that the dream job that I had been angling for almost a decade was gone. And it's worth saying here too, that it was probably the biggest personal, spiritual, and professional humiliation and disappointment that I had suffered, maybe in like several years. And the great thing about that was after experiencing this, it made me much less fearful around taking risks and doing things that might potentially lead to failure. Because I think for all of us who care about writing, who make ourselves vulnerable through sharing our thoughts with anyone, like trying to get published can feel so scary. But the great thing was, after experiencing like public humiliation and rejection, I was like, hey, you know what? I don't think I have that much further down to go. So this is in 2021. I was thinking about the fact that I suddenly had time on my hands to pursue writing. And I had less fear about public failure than I had before. So I was going to go for it. And at that time, I also had a friend who was getting back on the dating apps, after the pandemic. I was like, hey, you want to find a wife? I want to get published. Why don't we just make a bet with each other that the first person to get to 90 rejections has to pay the other person in cash or buy them an expensive meal? You choose. And so that was the bet that we agreed upon in 2021. And so I wanted to win, and I just decided to study up. And for me, that looked like going to my local library, reading everything on the shelf about nonfiction writing, long form journalism, and essays, because that's what I realized I wanted to write. They had collections of lectures from Columbia School of Journalism, so check those out too. I started looking at Nyman Lab, long form podcast, just like anything I could do I called it my DIY MFA program or MS program. I was like, I'm not going to pay for one, but I can probably cobble one together from the public library and win this bet. And so I just started pitching and cold calling editors, stalking them online, using everything available, Twitter, LinkedIn, interviews in which they accidentally dropped details about their geographic locations, just like anything I could get my hands on to pitch, and cold call. And then after just, I think maybe 3 months of doing this and just being as regular as possible to try to get those rejections, I landed my first feature with Teen Vogue. And that ended up just becoming a relationship that really fit and worked on both sides. And so I was able to place a few more reported features with them over the next few months. And I'm currently working with them on another project right now. And in the midst of all this, I also thought about pitching Ekstasis, which makes it really nice and easy for you to pitch. Thank you, Connor, by including a submissions email on the website. So I pitched Connor with great misgivings because I realized that I think writing about your faith and spirituality is like one of the hardest and scariest things to do. But after pitching Connor, realizing what a lovely human being he was, as well as a capable editor, this has become a very fruitful relationship that I've been so grateful for and like really enriched by. So that's a little bit of my background and how I started writing. And the thing that I wanted to share with this particular community of writers now is the unique challenge and opportunity that comes with being a Christian person who is trying to write in this cultural moment, and particularly in the context of Western Christianity. So like any Western country that has a history of entrenchment with the Christian church. And so I'll explain a little bit of what I mean by this. So first off, let's just talk about the fact that there's a problem with being a writer in a market-driven economy to begin with, right? This is pretty well documented. I think if you listen to an interview with any writer or like you're on their subscription list or newsletter, you're going to see the correlation between not necessarily great talent and great ideas and a great career, but great talent paired with the ability to draw your own audience online or through other means. And then those two things having to combine in order to generate an opportunity. For people who are like the outliers, who are just enormously talented, and then they break through on the sheer force of their talent, they then have to learn how to market themselves and create that platform to sustain their career. Elizabeth Brunig, who we interviewed not too long ago on Ekstasis, said in another interview that, she knows that she's hired in part for the fact that she has an enormous Twitter following. She has a healthy presence on Instagram. And these are things that publishers take into account when they're deciding who to platform and who to ignore. If you look at even people like Esau McCauley, who just released a memoir, if you're on his little newsletter, I remember a couple months before the book came out, he sent this like very blunt message to his followers saying, hey, if you know anyone who wants to be on this newsletter, would you please tell them, because my publishers are telling me that my numbers are not where they need to be. for this book that I have coming out. And it's Esau Macaulay, who's a New York Times columnist, as well as a proven bestseller. And then, to cap it off, for even people who are not within like that niche market of Christian writers, people like Sally Rooney, who's arguably the most like globally critically acclaimed millennial novelist currently working, said in her profile with The Guardian that she thinks the level of, I forget the word that she used, but she said the level of self-exposure that you have to agree to sustain a career as a writer is so torturous that, in her words, not mine, she says that she believes that a person would need to have a legitimate form of mental illness to actively desire a lifestyle that requires that kind of self-promotion and self-exposure that is expected of anyone who's going to publish a book that will make a profit. So that's kind of the landscape that I think we're working with just like anyone who is writing, Christian or not. But then you transpose all those things into the landscape of people who are trying to write in the context of their faith in the West. And I think those problems are brought into an even sharper focus. And, what I mean by this is, I think it's probably self-evident to most anyone who has been reading the news and has searched evangelicalism on the Google News feed for the past 10 years, because the number of scandals that have come from people who have successfully marketed any form of Christian content, whether it's worship albums, books, memoirs, speaking platforms, like what have you. Many of the people who have been the most successful in terms of expanding their reach and creating a profitable model of how they're going to operate as a personal brand, for them, it's been a Pyrrhic victory. The loss of whether it's their reputations, their families, maybe even like the bedrock of their faith, it's really thrown into question whether or not it's worth it for any Christian person to pursue any kind of influence within the kind of landscape that we're currently living in. All right, so where does that leave us? Because that would be kind of a downer to end on that note. Be like, have a good day, everyone. But where I wanted to take this was to throw it way back and to think about how the questions that we're dealing with are just, there's nothing new under the sun, right? These are not new questions. The language of celebrity or personal branding may be unique to our time, but the dynamics they describe are ancient. They pre-exist the church, right? If you go all the way back to 1 Samuel chapter 2, you see the sons of Eli, and they're out there at the temple, collecting sexual favors and food in exchange for letting people into the temple to make a sacrifice. Fast forward a couple millennia, you go to sectors of the Roman Catholic Church selling indulgences to people who are, wrestling with whatever it is that's on their conscience. Go forward a little bit more, you have the advent of mass culture in the United States, and you have televangelists, people who just tell you to give right now in Jesus' name and just to believe for the blessing. That's kind of what I grew up with, right? And then you come to right now, and you have every variety of Christian influencer. I can go to a home goods store a few minutes from my house, and I can probably buy something that was promoted by a Christian influencer if I wanted to. And so basically, even if economic models are different, even the language and the paradigms are different, God and mammon and their oppositional relationship and our tendency to confuse the two for one another, these are not new problems. So what does Jesus have to say about this, since this is an old problem that I assume he is familiar with? I think that in John 21, where Jesus speaks to his followers and he warns them, Matthew 7, where he warns them against false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravening wolves. I think he's describing precisely the kind of problematic social dynamic that we see, where people are able to assume the guise of someone who is coming into the church or coming among the spiritually hungry with the posture of being in a reciprocal or a mutually beneficial or even just a harmless relationship with them, but they are there with the intention to devour and to enrich themselves through that interaction, right? I think that pretty much summarizes everything we talked about with, 1 Samuel, many other things in many other parts of the church in many other countries and times. I think Jesus nailed it right there. And it is so indicting and terrifying. And then if you fast forward to what Jesus says to Peter after his crucifixion, resurrection, right before his ascension, one of his last conversations is to tell Peter, if you love me, feed my sheep. And this is also provocative and compelling and a little scary, because I think the subtext for me there is that if Jesus doesn't remind us to feed his sheep, then the compulsion to devour his sheep instead could potentially overpower us. So in some ways, Jesus' words are an indictment. But then taken in context of the rest of his life and his message, there is something profoundly compassionate and wise that I think he's also saying to us. Because the same man who tells people to feed and to not devour, to be on the lookout for wolves in sheep's clothing, is also saying something about his deep and intimate understanding of human hunger and what it is that drives us to do terrible things in the first place. Because the common thread in all of this story is that the wolves are hungry. They are there to find something to eat. The sheep are hungry, and that's why they need to be fed. There's this thread of mutual vulnerability, of inescapable human hunger that Jesus is saying has to be directed and cared for properly. Otherwise, it will overpower us. But in response, the stories that he tells about us are juxtaposed with the stories that Jesus tells about himself. And in his stories about himself, he is the bread of life. His body is our food. His blood is our drink. Even before he can speak a word about himself, he is born into a human body that is placed into a feeding trough for animals. And so I think the through line in Jesus' stories about himself, even as he's telling stories about us, is that he understands our insatiability and our need to be fed, and he meets that need. But not only does he meet that need, right? He proves that he meets that need through like communion at the Last Supper, through giving of his body as a physical sacrifice. And after he does all these things, he tells Peter again, feed my sheep. And to me, I think the implication there is that we are fed, and only in being fed and staying fed are we then equipped to obey his command, because otherwise we're helpless, right? We have to eat and drink of him, otherwise we devour one another. So practically, what does this mean? I think, there are books written, which are very good, which you should read, about the critiques that should be leveled against Christian celebrity culture, against institutions of Christian power that are exploitative and wrong. And at the same time, I think there's a problem with where that leaves people like you and me, who maybe don't have the institutional power or the titles that are really needed to reform these institutions. Because honestly, some of those decisions rest with the leaders of those institutions. They need to decide whether they will re-entrench themselves or reform. It's up to them. Grace be to them, right? But then for people like us, I think knowing what we are called to and being honest about our own weaknesses, I think it leaves us in a place of humility and need, where I think the only way to sustain good work as Christian writers is to continually confess our hunger and ask the Lord to invite us into a deeper communion with him. And so that's my prayer for this community, and that's my hope, is that, along with being good writers, good thinkers, people who value culture and beauty, is that we would also primarily be a group of people who value that communion with the Holy Spirit, with the God who calls himself the bread of life, so that we can obey his command to write and produce things that will actually feed his sheep. All right, so that's what I got for you today. Thanks for having me.
All right, I knew you were going to bring it, but I didn't know you were going to bring it that hard. That was next level. That was so good. Thank you so much, Yineng. I'm going to let you guys ponder that for just a moment, and I'd love if any of you have thoughts, questions, insights based on anything you've heard tonight. Please, I'd love for you to share. But as you think of that, I just want to make a kind of a plug, but also an invitation. And kind of, even though we're on a Zoom meeting now, I think that kind of an experience where we're all together, we're not hearing a person on a platform, but we're hearing kind of a communal exhortation, but it really is for the sake of shared interest and shared mission. I think that's really powerful. And we had our first Ekstasis Cafe event in North Carolina with Caroline. She booked an amazing bookstore, Goldberry Books, up in North Carolina. That was back in April. And then I moved to the UK, so it's been kind of a crazy couple months. But we are super excited with each of your individual communities and organizational connections and people that might be interested in reading their poetry, performing their music, reading an essay, whatever, just gathering for a poetic, musical, artistic night together. I think that now's the kind of time to take the adventure that we've been on and start to disperse it and let you each carry it in your own way. And so we have an opportunity, I call it an Ekstasis Cafe menu where you can kind of see, okay, I have this ingredient, yeah, I think I'm ready to go. So I'll send that out to everyone. I would love to really start taking actionable movement on some of those amazing responses that you gave on your application for this program. Most of you were extremely thoughtful and just kind of thinking outside of the box in a way that I wasn't expecting. So let's do it. Let's roll with it. Let's have Ekstasis cafes all over, and we'll show you how to do that. But now I'm going to let any of you have any questions, any insights, any thoughts. I know it's always awkward to go on the first one, but and if not, that's totally fine. I have some closing announcements, but Yining and Claire, you guys brought the heat in different ways, and I'd love to hear your insights or thoughts on it.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Brev. I do have a question. What is there like any expectation for us? Are we supposed to I don't know, what's the expectation for us? Are we supposed to deliver anything, or is it just everything that you guys just laid out and we just kind of keep putting along at our own pace? Or I guess the ambassador program, are we supposed to put it on our Instagrams, or is there any expectation at all? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. It's a great question. And Claire can also speak to this, but yes, definitely. So we don't want this to be a burden on people. We don't want we don't want you to be a marketing mouthpiece for some thing that we think is really important, but you don't think that's important. But we want to say, if you catch the vision of Ekstasis and you want to share it on your university campus, you want to put on an Ekstasis Cafe event in your local town, you want to share with your friends on Instagram about it. We also have a LinkedIn profile. So the Ekstasis Ambassador LinkedIn profile, you will actually now be able to add that to your LinkedIn profile and just kind of have it be a part of your employment, and not employment, but you know what I mean, kind of experience in this realm. And then that will signify to others that, okay, there's actually something going on with this. And with a literary journal, when it comes down to it, it's purely word of mouth. So if it's one thing that we are hoping that you guys catch the vision for, is to just share it within your communities. And not only that, we are really highlighting this in-person gathering endeavor and possibility. And so I'm going to outline at the end kind of ways that you can actually take actionable steps to have a small group gathering that works through a book together under the Ekstasis Cafe banner, or you hold like a full-on event and have some musicians, have some poets, have some readers, and then you sell tickets. And you are that host of the event. And that will become a lot more clear with the document that we have. But essentially, we want this to be a value-adding experience for you. We will have a monthly meeting like this, where it'll be a little more structured. And like Yining just did, we will have some and it sounds kind of hypocritical based on what you just talked about, but some higher level people in the publishing and writing industry. Next month, we have the Chief Creative Officer of Christianity Today, and also Mike Cosper, who is the host and creator of CT Media, and he developed the Rise and Fall of Marcel podcast. They will be kind of giving a storytelling lab for us here. So yeah, we want value add, but also we'd love for you to take this upon yourself and share it in your communities and partner with organizations and ministries that you think could be a good fit.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. That helps. It's clarifying.
Yeah, on the Slack channel that you guys mentioned, I saw several people in the chat, and I as well, like, haven't found access to that yet. How did y'all say we were going to get access to that? What's that going to look like?
Yeah, so I have the link ready. I'll send out kind of a conglomeration email after this event, probably tomorrow morning, coming up on midnight here. But it'll have that link, and you'll be ready to go and join that Slack channel tomorrow morning.
So this is, I guess a lot of people maybe are thinking about this, but I can't stand platform building and social media. And the things I write about on my newsletter is like designed for people like us. So is there going to be an opportunity for us to almost create an Excel of like everyone's newsletters? So I can follow everyone. And that way, at least they have one more person on their platform as they try to pitch book proposals and pitch to agents and stuff. Selfishly, I don't want it to be a selfish ask, but I also love that. And it's like, this is like the exact community I want to write for that you just can't find on social media very easily. Could we do that in the Slack? Is that possible? Or
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's a fantastic idea, and I definitely want that kind of mutuality of support of like-minded people. So absolutely, we'll make a way for you to do that. Great idea. That's great said. And honestly, just riffing off that quickly, I think what has been so special for me, kind of behind the scenes of Ekstasis, seeing the community develop, but also who's in and who kind of really catches that vision. It is a very hard, social media is not inclined to create such spaces, and whether it's viral techniques or algorithmic, whatever. And I know people are always talking about that, but whatever, I don't care about that. It really is about finding that niche embodiment of people that I say it so blandly, but see the poetic side of life and faith. And I think each of you in your own way do see that and want to press into that. And what's been so interesting for me working for CT now, and I only say this to you guys because I know you guys understand, but the broad evangelical, whatever, Christian world is more inclined to the surface experiences and tellings of our faith, which are very important, and the simplest person needs to be able to understand the gospel. But at the same time, for people who have that aesthetic longing and sensibility, we also need to have spaces that we can kind of find that like-mindedness and go deep together. And so despite being now on a quote unquote bigger platform, it actually hasn't resonated that much with the wider CT ecosystem because it's hard to find people like this. And it'll always be a niche thing, and that is a great thing, and we're excited to invite people into what will forever be small, and we're very happy with that. I see a few raised hands now, so let me I don't even know how to see who rose it first. Whoever rose their hand, I know Martin did eventually, but I think I saw someone first. If you raise your hand, go ahead and ask a question. I feel like I saw Kate Harwood.
Yes, hi. I'm a current grad student at Elon, and so I'm in an interactive media program, and we have a semester-long capstone project, and I'm all about like seeking shalom in local cities. Would there be a way I could like collaborate with anyone here about like getting feedback on the project and what does that look like? So would that be in the Slack channels?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. It sounds like you guys are more excited for the Slack than I anticipated in a good way. We started a Discord thing a while ago. Discord is not of my generation, maybe it's of some of yours, but I think Slack just has that professionalism to it that could really resonate with this group. So absolutely, we'll connect on Slack. We'll find ways to, hey, this is what I'm working on. Tell me about what you think about it. So absolutely. And we'll have a monthly or bi-monthly recurring meeting like this for anyone who's interested. So we'll be meeting again for sure.
Thank you.
All right. My question is just kind of similar, but just for those of us who are on social media, is there a way to kind of like figure out what everyone's handle is so we can connect that way? Maybe if it's just Instagram, I don't know if everyone has like all the different platforms, but maybe just if we all have one platform, we can connect on just that one, whichever it is.
Yeah, and right now I'll actually get Caroline very quickly to tell us about a form that's going to be sent out. It's like a 2-question form, but it can kind of have those details. Caroline, can you tell us a bit about that?
I was just going to say, so I'm going to send a Google form in the chat here, and I'm going to update it real quickly, and I'll include a slot for your website or Substack or newsletter if you have such a thing, and then a section for your social media handle if you have one. And I'll collect all those, and then we'll find a way to disperse them back to all of you so that you have access. If everyone is okay, I'll put a box if you want to keep your contact information private, you can check that and we won't share it. And along with that, in this form, if you could put in your mailing address as well. We won't share this with anyone else. This is just for us at Ekstasis. I'm going to be sending you a little package as a welcome to the ambassador program. And so that's just the reason we need your address. So, and feel free to put any other questions you have in that Google form as well.
Wonderful, thank you. And on that note, I see a few other questions, but quickly, as a perk to you all, we will be giving a 50% off code for Ekstasis issue 10 in print. So it's usually $25. It'll be approximately $12 for you guys. But then in addition, we want to send a free version of, or a free print edition of either issue 9 or 8. So we are in the current season of trying to sell off issue 10. It's just come out recently, so support that way, that'd be great. But then you will get a free copy of either issue 9 or 8. So you can see on the website which one you prefer and let us know in that same form. So yes, okay, I see Martin Willits. Go ahead, you have a question.
I think she answered my question just recently. Okay. Because in Excel, you can create different files. So if you wanted to find out who all the different poets were, you could. If you wanted to find all the fiction writers, you could. You could find all the emails, all the Twitter accounts, everything else in an Excel file. It depends upon how big you want it to be. So I think she already answered my question by saying she's working on something like this.
Perfect. Wonderful. Yes, that will be sent out to you all ASAP. Thank you for your technical expertise. Anyone else have any thoughts or questions or ideas that you want to share? We're coming up on an hour now, so we can disperse at any time. Feel free to drop out. I know it's midday for a lot of you, but any I don't want to clamp the discussion down, but I'd love to hear any of your thoughts.
I have something to share.
Go ahead, Derek.
Thank you for this, by the way. Looking forward to getting to know all of you. One thought I was thinking was maybe for the Slack, we could have a specific channel for introductions where we can kind of write about the things we're interested in, and then also find people within the community kind of easily that way. Just a thought.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. We will do that. And just another, I keep riffing on what everyone's saying, but this will be part one of a rolling ambassador program. So we had 130 applicants. We accepted about 100. We got a max of about 72 people tonight on this meeting, which is awesome. So just feel free to tell your friends about this, and in December we'll open up the applications again, and we'll kind of have a building program that we can really build this community in a warm and vibrant way. Anyone else have any thoughts on eating or anything else? And if not, I'm not trying to rush, I'm not trying to linger this, but it seems like there's a lot of great thoughts going on.
Connor, this is Maggie Philpott. Are you looking for a specific time commitment, or do you just see this as ongoing for the time being?
That's a great question. I will admit I don't know. I think I see it as more of a 6-month period to really invest in you guys, put on the best possible training in future events, and then but if you guys want to stay in it and we'll keep building on it, that's also an option. So we're really kind of building it as we go. So however it turns out fits your needs best.
Great, thank you.
All right, great. I'll leave it open for 2 more seconds and then we'll wrap up tonight. It's been truly a phenomenal time. It's been so cool that, as I said, 70 people were joining in a post-Zoom era. And I think it's a really warm community that is going to do some big things. And I'll just end really quickly. I had a meeting the other week with a mentor of mine. He's in his 70s. He's been putting on arts events for 40 years, and he exhorted me. He said, the difference between the Lord of the this is funny, but the difference between the Lord of the Rings books and movies is that in the books, Frodo and Sam, let me get this right, are on a quest. In the movies, they're on an adventure. And when he first said that, I didn't fully, okay, that seems pretty, I don't understand the difference there. But he was saying an adventure is self-serving. It's for what you can get out of it. It's for the excitement and the sights you'll see and the fun you'll have and the enemies you'll vanquish for your own gain. But a quest is for the benefit and for the well-being and the sake of others outside of you. And I think when he told me that, I realized that's something in my own heart that, like Yining is talking about, it's our natural default to want to make it about ourselves, make it about our own adventure, make it about our own well-being and gain. And I know I need to work on that, but I think for all of us here, I don't know what that quest is, and I know it can be that language of mission and quest can be subverted by people with ill motives. But I think if we find a quest to bring beauty, bring the poetic angle to our faith, and not be self-serving and not for what we can get out of it, I think we can really do some beautiful things around the world in our own communities and in our own friendships and families. So thank you so much for all joining. And we'll leave it at that for tonight. But I'm really excited to connect, and we'll send out some information to you via email. But really appreciate you all, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.